factor three terms, so trinomials again, but in this case, we're going to be looking at trinomials with the lead coefficient other than 1. So in our first example, our lead coefficient happens to be a 6, but this is still a trinomial, which means that we're going to factor this into the product of two binomials. Now I can jump right into this step because I don't have a GCF. No shared factor in all three of those terms. Now both of these parentheses are binomials, so I'm going to be filling in two spaces in each of these. And the first spaces, f and f, need to multiply to be that 6x squared, and my last two spaces need to multiply to be the 3. Now as we're setting these up, we're going to go through a really nice systematic process, but you can also just guess and check. Let's use our systematic method though. In our systematic method, we're going to start here. So step number 1, we're going to multiply those two outer terms together. So we're going to multiply the 6 times the 3 in this case, and we end up with an 18. In step number 2, we are going to be looking for pairs of values. So let me go ahead and set up a little table here. So we're going to be looking at pairs of values. We want them to multiply to be an 18. We want them to add to be our middle coefficient here of 11. So 11. Okay, let's go through some pairs. I'm actually going to start with one that I know doesn't work, but just showing you that any pair is worth checking if it multiplies to be 18. So we could check that 6 and the 3, but in this case, 6 plus 3 is equal to 9. So that one doesn't work. Let's do what else multiplies to be 18. How about 2 times 9? So another pair would be a 2 times a 9. And this is the one, right? So 2 plus 9 is equal to 11. So that's the one that we want. But here's where things change from the factorizations that we've done before. I'm going to rewrite my original trinomial, so 6x squared, but I'm going to write that middle term in red, plus 11x and then plus a 3. What I'm really doing is I'm splitting that middle term into a 2x plus a 9x. Okay, so here's what it looks like. I've got those 6x squared, and I'm splitting that plus 2x plus 9x. See how that still adds up to 11. And then I've got my plus 3 on the end. Now what I've done is to create a polynomial with 4 terms. And I can use factor by grouping here. So I'm going to group both of these off, and I'm going to find GCFs for each of these pairs. Now I'm going to make a little bit of room here. And let's find those GCFs. For that first pair, for the GCF, I want to know what goes into both the 6 and 2. So the coefficient for that first GCF is equal to a 2. And then what goes into both the x squared and the x? I'm just going to pick up the lowest power, and the lowest power is an x. I'm going to divide both of these, just the first two terms, this is factor by grouping, by my 2x, and I'm going to record it out in front. I'm really doing now a mini problem with just that first pair. Let's go ahead and record what we've got left inside. So recording what I've got left, I can cancel, let's see, 6 divided by 2 is equal to a 3. And I can cancel a single x, leaving me with a single x in the numerator. In the second pair, let's bring that plus sign down. In the second, I've got 2x divided by 2x. They don't go away. Something divided by itself is equal to 1, so I'm going to put a plus 1 there. Okay, on to my next pair. I know this is a little bit messy here, but my next pair is right here. So for this next pair, what goes into both 9 and 3? That would be a 3 for the coefficient. So GCF is equal to a 3. What goes into both an x and there's no other x, so there's no variable here. Now you might be wondering what happens if I switched the order. Your step here might look a little bit different, but we're going to get to the same thing at the end. But for the way that I've got this set up, I want to divide by a 3, a positive 3. The sign matters because I'm going to bring a plus 3 out in front. Okay, what do we have inside the parentheses? 9 divided by 3 is equal to a 3, and that x sticks around. We really want that 3x plus 1, and that's what we're going to get because 3 divided by itself is equal to a positive 1. So now I've got that new GCF of 3x plus 1. I'm going to slide that out in front, 3x plus 1, and I'm left with, in the next set of parentheses here, the 2x plus the 3. You could, of course, check this answer by multiplying it out, but this is our fully factored answer. In this next one, I know that I want to factor it into two binomials again, but instead I'm just going to go right into those two steps that I wanted to start with. So step number 1, I need to multiply my outer terms together. So that's going to be a 10 times a negative 3. That's going to be a negative 30. So next I'm going to look for those pairs of numbers. Let me go ahead and set up a little chart here. And for my pairs of numbers, I need them to multiply to be a negative 30. The sign's really important here. And I need these to add to be that middle coefficient, that negative 7. Okay, so multiplying to be a negative 30 and adding to be a negative 7. Now I could use the 10 and the negative 3. I'm just going to use one that doesn't work here to start. So 10 and negative 3. Yes, they multiply to be a negative 30. But if I add them together, I'm really close, right? 10 minus 3 is equal to 7 and not negative 7. So what if I just swapped the negative sign and I instead did a negative 10 times a positive 3? They still multiply to be negative 30, so that works. And if I add them together, negative 10 plus 3 is equal to my negative 7. That's exactly what I want. Let's go ahead and rewrite this. So I've got my 10x squared, and I'm going to go ahead and just rewrite that negative 7x using the two terms that I found. So I'm going to write minus 10x plus 3x. And I'm going to bring down that minus 3. So this is now going to be factor by grouping. So I've got my first group here, and I've got my second group here. I'm going to start by factoring out in this first group. I want to factor out, looks like a 10x. Oh, I should have little equals there. You can barely see it, but my GCF is a 10x. Let's divide both by that 10x. And then I'm going to factor that out in front just of this first pair here. Okay, so what do we get? 10 divided by 10 is 1. Cancel 1x. I've got 1x left. Let's bring down that negative sign. 10x divided by itself is equal to a 1. So when I factor this next pair, let me move this over so I've got a little more room. I want to get that x minus 1 again. And I'm going to get that, aren't I? So the GCF in the second pair, let me write it so you can actually see it, is going to be a 3, a positive 3. So I'm going to divide both out by a positive 3, positive 3. The positive 3, the sign matters here, comes out in front. And then what am I left with? I'm going to make these blue here. I am left with 3x divided by 3 is an x. And then negative 3 divided by positive 3 is that negative 1 that I wanted. This is my new GCF. I can bring that out in front. I'll show you this step here since I've got more room. We're really dividing that out, and I can record that now out in front. I'm going to do this in black. X minus 1. Canceling those, and I'm left with the 10x and the plus 3. I've got one more for you. I'm glad you stuck around for this last one because we've got an additional step with this last one, and it really needs to be your very first step. So I noticed that I've got a 12, an 18, and a 6. They're all divisible by 2, so I've got a GCF of at least 2. But what else goes into 12, 18, and 6? Well, it happens to be a 6. So I can divide each of these by a 6. That's going to make my life so much easier. Plus, I'm not going to forget about my GCF. So 6. 12 divided by 6 is a 2, so I get a 2x squared. 18 divided by 6 is a 3, so I get a plus 3x. 6 divided by 6 is equal to a 1, so I get a 1 there. Now I can go ahead and move right into our two steps. And as I'm doing my two steps here, I'm really working inside of my trinomial, but I'm going to remember to hang on to that 6 for our final answer. So working inside of this trinomial, I need to multiply the two outer numbers. 2 times 1 is equal to 2. And then step number 2, I am looking for pairs of numbers. There really aren't like any choices here. Pairs of numbers that multiply to be a 2 and add to be my middle term here, which is a 3. Now everything in our trinomial is positive, so I'm not going to bother with a negative 2 times a negative 1. I want both of these to be positive. So 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 plus 1, writing it just enough room there, 2 plus 1 is equal to 3. So I want to separate that 3x, I want to separate that into a plus 2x plus 1x. Let's go ahead and bring those other terms down. I've got my 2x squared and I've got my plus 1. Now I'm just going to hang on to my GCF here in yellow because I really want you to be focusing in on what we're doing with the factor by grouping. Starting with that first pair, I need a coefficient and a variable that divide into both of those first two values. So the GCF here is going to be a 2 and then an x. I'll pick up that lowest power. I'm going to leave the 6 out in front here, and then let's go ahead and deal with our 4 terms here in the middle. Okay, so as I'm factoring out that 2x, 2x, I record that out in front, 2x. What I'm left with in the parentheses, the 2 cancels, x squared divided by an x leaves me with a single x. In the next term, I've got 2x divided by 2x, and that gives me a plus 1. Now, in our second pair, I already have x plus 1, but it's important that you factor out a positive 1 anyway, and the sign is really going to be helpful here. So I'm going to factor out a positive 1. It's really going to act as a placeholder, a really important placeholder. That positive 1 comes out in front. Didn't actually change anything. I end up with an x plus 1 inside those parentheses. Okay, so I still have this 6 out here, and I'm going to go ahead and continue working that inside there. I'm going to factor out the x plus 1. That's my new GCF, x plus 1. And then as I factor that out in front, I get x plus 1. What am I left with? Canceling those, I get a 2x in the parentheses. And then canceling the x plus 1s there. Remember that really important placeholder of a plus 1? That goes there. Okay, so what does our final answer look like? I've got that 6 as my GCF out in front. I have an x plus 1 and a 2x plus 1. I've got more factoring videos. I'll see you next time.